My first guest, Ben Shapiro. You got to go to Ben. Are you on? Do we have you?
I'm here, yeah.
Ben, here's the thing. Everybody's got to go to Breitbart News if you're in the car driving home in Southern California, or if you're in Memphis on the Point, the voice of the Mid-South. You've got to go to Breitbart News. The homepage is exactly like I think Andrew always envisioned it would be, driving a narrative about a guy that I think America is being introduced to this weekend. And it's not Jimmy Kimmel. It's a guy named Dan Savage. And I got to tell you, the stuff that you've put up there, Ben, the commentary you've got, I think people are in shock. It's all over Twitter. I've been getting calls all day. I mean, I want to do an entire show on this, but I've had so many other guests book. Who is Dan Savage, and why is he going after Christian youth in this vicious, bullying manner that he is?
Well, Dan Savage is a militant gay activist. He writes his sex column, which is extraordinarily graphic. I wouldn't recommend it for a bedtime reading. And Mr. Savage also runs a campaign called the It Gets Better Project. Now he's become much more
the project called It Gets Better.
Yeah, It Gets Better. And what that's a reference to is it's supposed to be reaching out to young gay people, teenagers who may be gay, who are being bullied, and it's supposed to reach out to them and tell them, well, don't kill yourselves. Basically, it gets better. Right? Seems nice enough. There's not really an issue with that. Obviously, nobody is for suicide of teenagers, but there is one problem, which is that Dan Savage, who is taking this anti-bullying stance, happens to be the biggest bully on planet Earth. And when it comes to people who disagree with him, he bullies them with a regularity and vitriol unmatched by anybody on the left. I mean, it's truly astonishing.
I want to go through all of these articles. You have to go to Breitbart News, go to the front page. I think there's 5 or 6 stories up there, but I want to go through each one. The one that broke the other night, and I correct me if I'm wrong, you've been kind of monitoring or tracking this guy for a while. I know I've heard in previous conversations, you've been saying, when nobody heard of this guy, you've been saying that this guy is a real problem, that this guy is a vicious bully who has targeted middle-class kids, who's targeted Christian youth. But let's go through what popped the other night. This thing looked like the ad in the 1984 Super Bowl. This guy's on a huge screen, and he's on this vicious rant about the Bible and the vicious rant about Christian teenagers. And these poor kids are leaving this looks like a seminar on journalism, and they're being heckled by the audience as they courageously walked out. Is that what started this whole thing this weekend?
That is what started this whole thing this weekend. I have been monitoring, Savage for a while, but I'll tell you who really monitored Savage heavily was Andrew. Andrew Breitbart really knew that he saw Savage as the tip of the vitriolic leftist bullying spear. And so basically this weekend, Savage spoke at something called the National High School Journalism Conference. Now, why Dan Savage would speak at the National High School Journalism Conference is beyond me. He's supposed to be there speaking probably.
Hang on. He was clearly invited by the people putting this on, and this was a conference
Correct.
Of all types of people, Christian youth, but basically secular youth and people who are unchurched and everybody, just to come together for a high school to become better journalists in high school and maybe get so excited you pursue a career. Correct? That was it. So parents would send your kids if you had an interest in journalism. Correct?
That's right. That's exactly what it is. It's a nonpartisan, non-religious, non-secular. It's just everybody's there to learn about journalism. So Dan Savage shows up, and he's supposed to speak about bullying. And instead what he does is he starts talking about how basically the biblical world is BS, and except he used the full word, right? He says the biblical worldview is BS, and he starts ripping into the Bible.
Well, but he specifically, not just the biblical worldview, he specifically states the Bible, right?
He specifically states the Bible. Yes, he talks about elements of the Bible, particularly homosexuality. He says that that's BS because Dan Savage, again, is a militant gay guy. And so he, wants to put it out to the audience that that everybody in the world should accept his point of view on issues like gay marriage, and if they don't, it's because they're bigots and it's because they believe in the BS that is the Bible. That's essentially what he was saying. So he gets up and he says this in that kind of colorful language. And Christian kids start getting up and walking out, which is what you do when someone says something.
So hold it, but he's being projected on these massive screens. He's at a remote location, and it looks like something out of 1984. I mean, he's sitting there like a dictator. He looks like Goebbels. ranting at these high school kids, and it looked like a big auditorium. And then all of a sudden, it looks
Yeah.
like certain kids who just couldn't take it anymore get up and start walking out. Correct?
Which, by the way, is a dignified thing to do, right? I mean, they're not heckling him, they're not yelling at him, they're getting up and they're walking out, which is what you do when someone says something offensive. You know, if President Obama had done that with Jeremiah Wright, we'd all be a lot better off. So they do the right thing. They get up and they start walking out, and he then proceeds to say, as they're walking out, that they are being pansy asses. That's the word that he uses, and he says it's about these Christian kids who are walking out.
Hold on, I want to take our time here. They're walking out and saying, and if I watched the video that we had up, they were being heckled by some of the other kids. I mean, it was quite vicious. And then he goes after them and calls them. What do you call these kids that were walking out?
He calls them pansy-assed for walking out on him. It's pansy-assed of them to walk out on him instead of just listening to him rant and rave against their religion.
And they're being heckled. And they're being heckled by other kids / bullies while they're walking out. Correct.
Correct. They're being heckled by other people.
It is one of the most powerful tapes you will ever see. If you want to see the unvarnished face of the friends of Barack Obama, go to Breitbart News and just play this tape of the vitriol, the hate, the venom that this guy Dan Savage doles out on these poor Christian kids. We've got 2 minutes in this segment. We're going to bring you back after the jump, Ben. But here's a question. This guy turns out he's on MTV. Tell us a little bit about this guy. He's actually he's becoming a big media player, right?
Oh, yeah. Not only does he have a show on MTV, and not only does he have a syndicated column about sex, which centers heavily on gay sex, he also is very, very close with the Obama administration. We have a picture up on the site right now of Dan Savage with Joe Biden and with Dan Savage's partner, Terry Miller, at the White House. They're invited to the White House in June 2011 because as head of the It Gets Better project, he has worked consistently with the White House. In fact, the people who have cut tapes in favor of the It Gets Better project headed by Dan Savage, and Dan Savage, by the way, is mentioned on the White House website. The people who
Hold it. Dan Savage, you can go to the White House website today and see Dan Savage's name tied to this program, It Gets Better.
Correct.
Okay.
And if and the people who have
I
cut
hope
tapes
somebody's got
on
a
behalf of
screensaver of
Dan
that because I think
Savage's
this guy's going to get kicked to the curb quicker than Bill Maher. But I hope we have a screensaver of that because I'm sure that won't be up there tomorrow morning.
Oh, yeah. Well, the people who have cut tapes on behalf of this guy, it's going to be hard for them to scrub it. People who have cut tapes on behalf of this guy's organization include President Obama, Vice President Biden, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, Secretary of Labor Hilda Solis, Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack, and a number of people from the Department of Labor. So.
My guest is Ben Shapiro. He's editor-at-large at Breitbart News. He's breaking the story over the weekend of Dan Savage. He's got a lot more to talk about when we come back. This is Stephen K. Bannon, the Victory Sessions, KABC, 790 AM, Talk Radio, Los Angeles, California. We'll be back in 2 minutes with Ben Shapiro, Breitbart News. My guest is editor-at-large at Breitbart News, Ben Shapiro. He has broken a story over the weekend that you've got to go to Breitbart News and see everything that Ben Shapiro and Joel Pollack have up here about this. It's insane. Dan Savage, what else do we have up on the site? You've got so much video. You've got so much background. This guy it's absolutely insane what this guy's been saying. I can't believe that he's got not just friends in high places, but he's buddies with President Obama and Vice President Biden.
Well, you know, he does know a lot of people in the Obama administration, and he's associated closely with them, and he visited the White House, and we have all those pictures up. Including one from all the pictures from his June 2011 visit to the White House. But going all the way back, who exactly is Dan Savage? He's the kind of guy, and the White House knew all this when they associated with him. In 2000, Dan Savage was a columnist for Salon.com, and he was assigned to cover Gary Bauer's presidential campaign in Iowa. So he signed on as a volunteer.
Gary Bauer was the Christian coalition guy that made a somewhat of a run for president at the time. I remember.
Yeah, he actually did pretty well in Iowa.
Yeah.
And Bauer, so he signed on with Bauer's campaign. He was gay. Bauer was pro-traditional marriage. And he decided he hated Bauer and his staff so much that he contracted flu. And now that he had flu, he decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go around licking the doorknobs in the office to try and give everybody in the office flu the day before the primary. He also chewed up a pen, like a fountain pen, and he then handed it to Bauer in the hopes that he would force Bauer to get
Hold on. We have on the site, and I read this today, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, what kind of animal would do this? He actually contracted the flu, and the headline says licked a door handle. hoping the guy would
Oh
open
yeah.
it and then chewed a pen and then gave it to the guy to hopefully that he would put it in his mouth or something, as you use pens, right, to write, and then when you're thinking, to actually have the guy contract flu.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So Dan Savage is using like basic biological warfare back
And
in
this
2000.
is the type of guy that the Obama administration supports his bullying plan or anti-bullying plan and has him at the White House. I mean, these facts are out there and known, correct?
Oh yeah, they're all out there and known. A couple of years ago on Bill Maher's show, he said, "I wish the Republicans were all effing dead." Right? This is the guy who's now against bullying. Right? All Republicans should be effing dead. But it's not just Republicans, by the way. There's a guy from the Green Party who's running for Senate. And he said about this fellow who's in Pennsylvania, he's running against Bob Casey. He said about this guy that he should, quote, be dragged behind a pickup truck until there's nothing left but the rope. This is the kind of person who should be running the anti-bullying effort for the Obama administration. It's beyond parody. It's insane. I mean, that's not all. I mean, we've got tons and tons.
But
of
here's
stuff
the question:
there.
until you had the courage to do this, and until the Breitbart sites put all this up today, has anybody tried to take this guy? And I remember Andrew. This was one of the guys that Andrew said was a very dangerous guy. But has anybody really tried to ever take this guy on?
No, nobody's really tried to take him on because they're afraid that there's going to be backlash from people who agree with him on gay marriage, and they're going to be considered homophobic. But this is not a gay, not gay issue. This is a bully, not bully issue. Right?
No, this is a guy this is not even about bullying. This is a guy that has issues, right, and shouldn't be around children. He's got issues, the anger, the venom, the vitriol. I mean, the association that invited him to speak to the young journalist should be ashamed of themselves. President Obama and Vice President Biden inviting this guy to the White House, they should be ashamed of themselves. This is a guy that is not, this individual is not stable.
On the website. There are 100 anti-bullying groups in the country, like hundreds of them. There are seriously lots and lots of anti-bullying groups in the country. They picked out the one that was run by the guy who's the most radical left, sick person, sick individual maybe in America. I mean, this guy is really, really gross. And for the Obama administration to put out, they have links to the It Gets Better project on their website. They have all the administration officials.
But by the way, this guy's also
they're using government resources to push it.
The government resources, and correct me if I'm wrong. This guy's the guy that came up with the word associated with Senator Santorum's name because of Senator Santorum's Christian beliefs and his policy beliefs. That was so vile, and then had Google use it so you can kind of Google it. You can Google the name.
He Google bombed him. He Google bombed Santorum, so that every time you
Google supported him. And Google supported him. They refused to take it down. So the fix is in on this. Where does this story go from here, Ben?
Well, I think that the Obama administration now have to be forced by people like us and by people in the mainstream media. They have to answer some questions now about why they associated with this guy in the first place. And this guy either needs to step down from the It Gets Better project, which is a project he founded, and disassociate from it, or the Obama administration needs to shift its resources away from It Gets Better and toward projects that are not associated with people who are radical and insane people like this.
This guy's got to get kicked to the curb like they kicked Bill Maher to the curb. Okay, our guest has been editor-at-large Ben Shapiro. You have to go to Breitbart News when you get home, or if you're at home, go to the website. Ben Shapiro is all over the front page. One of the great young reporters in America. Ben, thank you very much for coming on. We'll follow this during the week and have you back here next week.
Sounds good. Be well.